Welcome to the KPI webinar. My name is Stella and I'm one of the directors at CoverageBook. Before I jump into the detail of today's webinar, I just want to check whether you can see me okay and hear me okay. So if somebody in the chat could just say yes or no. Yeah, great. Thanks, Laurie. Thanks, Sarah, and everybody else. I will be able to continue. So today's webinar, it's actually the first of a new series that we're going to be doing. Some of you might be aware of the past webinars where we would go through CoverageBook, the tool. That's all now sort of recorded. So we're going to be doing regular webinars on more interesting topics that hopefully will help you at the time that you actually might have some of these issues. So today is all about KPIs, setting KPIs. And I know that from my past experience of working in PR, this is a really busy time right now in January where you're about to kick off the new campaigns. And you might be setting those final details of KPIs and certainly refreshing media lists and that kind of thing. So hopefully today's will really help. Obviously, they're going to be really broad and specific to your particular campaigns and your particular brands and organisations you're going to be working with. But hopefully I'll be able to give you some pointers to just really make you think about the ones that you've got set and hopefully add some more detail. So it will be great. I'm going to run through some pointers, and then if you do have any questions on the slides that I'm going to share with you or any of the points, just pop them into the chat and I'll answer as many as possible at the end. Okay. Right. I'm now going to just jump into the slides. And hopefully you can see these. So first of all, it's just worth saying that without clear objectives, key performance indicators are absolutely pointless. This might seem like a very obvious point, but it is really true. So I know from, I'll put my hands up to this, I'm not sure who else wants to admit this, but you get to the end of the year and sometimes you might have presented your new ideas, your new campaigns to the client or to the stakeholders, and then you sort of break up for Christmas, all of the ideas are set, and then you sort of then add the KPIs at a later date, maybe around now. And often they are just sort of increased numbers from the previous year. Now, that's not going to do a great deal for true organisational impact or true business impact. So that's why I want to sort of share today like why you need to go into a lot more detail. But the key performance indicators really need to be associated to the objectives. But if the objectives are broad or generic, then your KPIs are going to be broad and generic, and then that's going to be equaling sort of not much impact at all. And we all know that we are really up against it with really proving true impact at the moment. So please do review the objectives before you jump to the KPIs. So the objectives, you really want to be clear, and you want to have organisational objectives as well as campaign specific. So you might want to look at primary or secondary ones, the primary one being more of the link to organisational ones, and the other ones, the secondary being more with campaign specific. So I'm going to be going into a bit more detail with this with the examples that I share, but please do start here before you jump into the numbers and metrics in KPIs. So organisational objectives and therefore KPIs can be something along the lines of organisational can be sales, for example, if it's an e-commerce or a retailer, or you could be looking at, if it's not sort of a retailer, you could be looking at brand perception maybe, or maybe a shift in opinion. And these are real sort of much higher level objectives that you might be needing for organisational impact. But they're much more on your campaign level, so bringing it down on a secondary level from some of those higher objectives. You might be looking at something like site traffic or downloads or content engagement or SEO impact or awareness of a brand or a product, for example. These are all sort of more specific objectives and ones that you can set quite specific KPIs off on a campaign level. But you do need to have that sort of top level organisational view first, then move on to your campaign level as well. Because you'll then, by the end of this time next year, and when you're looking at your end of year reviews and proving your worth, all of those campaign specific objectives and therefore KPIs will all be adding up to that sort of top level organisational ones. And that's really, these organisational ones at the top are really where you're going to be proving your worth. Then the next section down will be, okay, how did we get there? So for example, sales for an e-commerce site. Let's take an example. Amazon, for example, maybe if you're doing the PR for Amazon, then you might want to be looking at whether you sent any traffic from your PR coverage onto the actual site itself. Were you focusing on a particular product in your PR? So you might be looking at the awareness of that product within your coverage on a campaign level, but therefore at the end of the year, what kind of impact did that make from an organisational perspective? Did you increase sales of that particular product? Did you increase the traffic going to that particular product page? These are just examples that I'm throwing out, but it just shows you how you need to make sure that you have those two lines of metrics going along throughout the whole year. So top level organisational versus campaign specific. So I'm going to be bringing those into a bit more in the examples. Now, with all objectives and therefore KPIs, I recommend that you go for niche and specific. And the reason for that is kind of going back to my initial point, is that when it's generic, it doesn't actually make much difference to your results and then also the organisational results either. So, for example, if you just said, I'm going to raise awareness is my objective, and my KPI for that is that I'm going to get 20% more articles secured this year in comparison to last year. Well, great, you're going to get more, but what does it actually mean? How do you really know that you've increased that awareness? Because the articles that you might secure this year might be on smaller sites and they might have less people looking at them. They might have actually had nobody landing on that particular article or sharing it with their peers. And therefore, even though the number has increased, actually looking at the top level goal, you may not have actually reached that. You may not have increased the awareness at all. So generic isn't good. You need to get really specific. So I want to raise awareness, and I'm going to do that by looking at this target audience on these sites in this particular area of the site. And I'm going to measure that by particular social shares and article level data. So that's, I know I've just said that in a quick way. I'm going to go into that a bit more detail, but it just gives you an idea of why generic doesn't work and why you need to be specific. So I think I've just sort of gone through this in a bit more detail, but I've already just mentioned this, sorry, but what I want to just say here is you need to get your stakeholders involved or your clients involved when you're setting these objectives and KPIs. And I recommend being inquisitive and asking lots of questions before you get started and when you're really setting these. So organisational stats and KPIs can't really be sort of set without their input. So if you are looking at sales, for example, I mean, this is just one example. You could have organisational objectives in all sorts of ways, depending on your vertical of PR. You could be in healthcare, and it could be something very different to if you were in sports or crisis PR, for example. So I'm just using sales right now, but hopefully you can relate it to your particular area and vertical. But yeah, sales, for example, don't just have sales. Ask the questions, sales of what? Is it a particular product? By how much? How much are we looking to increase those sales? What is actually achievable and not? And in what channel as well? So sales in a high street shop, online, in a particular area of an online site, and then through what marketing as well. So sort of put just PR against the sales results in total, because obviously that would be a very big objective and very big KPI. Don't do that. Actually try and get really specific against what kinds of channel. PR actually has an impact on search, which can have a huge impact on e-commerce sales. So you might want to have a look at that. Or you could just look at direct sales from your, so coming from traffic from your coverage. So there's lots of different things that you can track, but just again, go really hitting that point home, get specific and get niche with your targets. And not just so, you can sort of look after yourselves with this, but really so you can prove your worth. It'd be much better that you can prove that these sales directly came from your work and nobody else could claim them, So also if you had, and there's another example here, so that's not sales, brand perception, that's a real big generic one, but obviously so important to public relations. But, ask the questions, by who are we looking at this brand's perception from? In what time periods are we looking for a change in the opinion of the brand? And by what measurement methods? And you should really agree all of these now before you start the work. And make sure you're tracking consistently over the year with all of these as well. It's a real important one. So what kind of KPIs could you be looking at here? So we've talked about the objective, but actually what kind of metrics and KPIs could we look at? So for traffic, for example, I mentioned that as down. So we're looking at the secondary sort of campaign level objectives now. And I had a few examples. So one of the examples here is traffic. That sounds great. That might sound niche enough or specific enough, but it's not. That, again, looking at total traffic onto your clients' websites is vast. You don't want to be sort of saying that you are responsible for all of the traffic going to a client's website. So be specific in your objectives and also your KPIs. So what particular page are you trying to drive traffic to? From where? Are you driving the traffic from social activity, or are you driving the traffic from coverage itself? So be quite specific. And again, when you're looking at the KPI numbers, saying what time period you're going to be looking at that traffic, as well as how much of an increase. It could be downloads. So maybe this year, it's quite important to you and your clients to be downloading some content from their particular sites. Maybe you've got campaigns that might be directing people to that content. Again, looking at the time period of that. And then maybe you might be looking at the engagement around content as well. Again, just be really specific. Is it clicks? Is it downloads? Is it the time on that content? SEO is actually an area that's increasing hugely in public relations in terms of objectives. We could probably do a whole webinar on SEO and PR, and if you're interested, let me know, because I can do that with you guys. It's actually quite a key part of my experience, so happy to help with that. But just to mention here, if you see this pop up on a request for your objectives or your KPIs, you need to be very specific with this, because SEO, search engine optimization, is a huge area and has many factors affecting where a brand or where a website appears in search results. It's PR is a big part of it, but it's certainly not the key driver or the only driver. So you wouldn't want to be responsible for only as the sole provider of increase in positions, for example. You'd want to get quite specific around what your responsibility is around SEO. I would say sort of links in your coverage would be a key one, but again, you need to go back to who you're working with, your clients, to understand where that objective has come from and who you're going to be working with before you sort of get into exactly what your KPI would be. Don't agree to just increase in search positions down to you. Brilliant if you are having an impact on that, but get quite specific on what your part of it is. If you want more information on SEO, let me know in the comments. Another example is awareness. I've already sort of mentioned this, but again, it's quite broad. It's a very generic term that gets used a lot in public relations. Be specific. Is it the awareness of the brand, a product, a particular campaign, an artist, a key spokesperson? Who are you trying to increase the awareness among? Who exactly within your target audience is that? What's the age group? How are you going to find them? How are you going to measure it? In what time period? And in comparison to what? Were they not aware at all? Is the awareness more positive now? So this is, don't just sort of say increase awareness. Get really specific and then add more of the metrics and the numbers after that. Okay. So I think that's what I just said. Before setting any of your objectives, KPIs, metrics, and numbers, just make sure you have been inquisitive and ask as many questions as possible with your clients. Set some questions out, go and have a session with them, get as much information as possible, then go away and refresh and refine down those objectives and those KPIs. Okay, so once you have done that and you've got some good points in there of KPIs and objectives set, the next sort of area will be looking at getting to the real sort of numbers and increases, and that's a really tough one in setting KPIs. So I've got here retrospect. That might be a new term for you, but it actually became more familiar for me in the last couple of years. So for those of you who don't know, I had a very long career in public relations, and then I've moved into PR tech. So I work for CoverageBook, and we have a number of other tools. Now, retrospects and retrospectives are a really quite a common activity, if you like, in software teams. And the reason for this is because you sort of look back at the work that you've done on a regular basis. And it's not something that I was used to, and it's certainly not a sort of a frequent or well-known activity in public relations and not in public relations agencies, although it is starting to come in, and I've heard of a couple of teams starting to do this. Now, the reason it's here is because looking at your past activity and your past coverage can really help set new KPIs. And what it can really help with is getting to the actual number of your KPI and how much you should increase it by in comparison to sort of your last piece of activity. But the only way you can do that is if you've actually recorded that. Now, if you just have sort of scans of coverage on your system, it's going to be really difficult to do this. It's going to be hard. So if that is the case for you guys, start afresh now and make sure that you record everything over 2018. So when you're in this position next year of setting your KPIs for 2019, this is going to be a whole lot easier because you would have been tracking all of your KPIs across this year. You'd be tracking lots of different metrics across all of your coverage. And what this means is it's going to be much easier for you to draw insights and query that data. You'll be a PR analyst. Yeah, I'm going to show you how that useful that is. But yeah, we actually call that sort of retrospectives. And I wouldn't even, I know this is going to be new to a lot of you, but I wouldn't even sort of keep this to an annual thing. I recommend doing this at the end of each month. Or if you can't do that, at least quarterly. It's a really good stop point to say, okay, what have we achieved over the last couple of months? Are we on track? And are there any interesting patterns in our coverage and in our results that we should take note of? It might not be completely associated to some of the KPIs that you've set. Maybe a particular journalist has started to write about you more frequently, and they weren't an original sort of hot contact. These are things that you'll start to notice when you're actually recording everything, rather than just sort of taking screen grabs of coverage. So retrospect should be your New Year's resolution in PR. Okay, so how you actually record it, you can just be quite basic and use Excel and record your coverage. You may have started doing this kind of thing already with coverage trackers. I know a lot of you use coverage trackers already, but I just, make sure that you are doing this if you're not, but also make sure that you've got everything in there that you want. So obviously key things like publication, dates, headlines, and then any kind of metrics for those sites that you might be using. I would actually put a lot more detail than what's on screen here right now. I recommend, if you can see this, going into more detail around whether you had links included in that coverage. What were the social shares of that piece of coverage? Did you have mentions, brand mentions? Did you get quotes for spokespeople in that coverage? The more that you record, the more that you can draw insights from and set better KPIs for next year. So yes, it does take a little bit of investment of time, but I believe it is worth it. The examples that you can see on screen, so this is obviously using Excel. In fact, there is a really good how-to of doing this kind of thing by Steph Bridgman. I'll send you the link of her blog post of explaining how best to record coverage and data in using Excel. She also shares how to sort of draw those insights out quickly as well using Excel. So it's a really useful post. I'll share that in the chat afterwards. But obviously it does take a bit of input of time. So maybe with the recording of PRs, of the recording of the coverage items. So you'd want to just sort of see who could do that. If time is short, but you still want to record the information and the data of your coverage, it is a benefit of using CoverageBook, the tool that I work for, as you know. You're looking at the insights section of CoverageBook.com at the moment. I selected the client Adidas. On the left, you can refine by client. On the right, you can refine by date. And then you can also refine by sort of the most monthly visits those sites had, the most social shares, etc., etc. So it's quite quickly to pull out those insights and sort of check where you are using CoverageBook. But once you have that and you can refer back to different metrics and KPIs that you might be tracking, which ones do you actually choose for 2018? So I'm just going to put out a couple of examples just for today, and I'm just going to show you how you can sort of get to the number and the actual metric by also sort of looking back as well. So first one is awareness, just because that is it's a big one. I've seen that many times. You use it all the time in KPIs. In PR, and you see that a lot in written objectives from clients. So what metrics do you use for awareness? So I'm just going to use an example. Excuse me. And I'm going to use a piece of coverage here that's been secured on the Daily Mail. Now, normally with awareness, we would think about big numbers. Big numbers are used quite a lot in PR. And if we're thinking about sort of awareness, we think, okay, we want to prove that we got our brand or our campaign out to a big number of people. So we secure a piece of coverage on the Daily Mail, then we may well look at the traffic or the unique users of this particular site. And we also might look at the actual content of the site and then look to see whether we're mentioned. Obviously, if we weren't mentioned at all, then it's useless. So we'd want to count that. But then also looking at who actually saw this might help with the proving awareness. So if you're looking at that particular site, you might look at unique users or the site traffic. So let's just take a look at that. So the Mail Online records latest recording of unique users I gained from a well-known tool, 219 million. And then just a slightly different take on, but a similar metric is looking at estimated site traffic. those of you who are CoverageBook users will know that we use SimilarWeb for gaining our site traffic for particular publications. So you can see there that the site traffic is higher than unique users, but that's because it's visits, whereas unique users is actual uniques. So if one person went to that site, it's just recording that on the first one, whereas site traffic is, it's not individual people, it's just how many times that site has had visits in that particular month, but they're both based on a month. So what a lot of people are used to is sort of just recording either one of those. And by the way, I'm not saying that sort of either one of those is better than the other. It's, you know, I particularly prefer estimated traffic, because it gives you a bit more sort of idea of seasonality, because it changes month to month, whereas unique users rarely does. But that's not my point. My point is that what we're looking at here is a very big number, and it's actually for the Mail Online as a whole website. So when we were thinking about whether we're actually proving that we have generated awareness from this particular piece of coverage, that doesn't actually tell you anything. All that's saying is that the Mail Online has a lot of people going to it each month. It doesn't tell us how many of the people in that month landed on that page, saw the piece of coverage, found the brand mention, and was then made aware. That's what we need to prove. So don't get sort of taken by the big numbers and think bigger is better, because it's not proving anything. It doesn't tell us anything there, and it's not realistic. So, what we should be looking at is actually how many people really saw that piece of coverage. So you can see here that we've got monthly visits now on the top right. So again, that's how many people went to the whole site. But what we want to be looking at is how many people really saw that page. So if you think about the Mail Online has absolutely thousands, if not millions of pages. It's updating with new stories every minute of every day. It's a huge site. It's not like a blog where you just have sort of one main area and one blog post gets uploaded every few days. This is literally has, many categories and hundreds of articles being uploaded to each of those categories every week. So when you're looking at that total number, the percentage of that is really going to go down. It's going to really sort of divide down. So the best thing that we can do is just take a realistic view of what percentage of that total would have actually landed on that page. So looking at a site like the Mail, you need to be realistic about where your piece of coverage is. If it's on the home page, it's going to get a bigger percentage of that number, but it won't get it all, because remember that total 387 million was over the course of 30 days, and it's across the whole site. So even just the home page won't get that total amount. So you just really need to be realistic and divide down. So how do you do that? Well, we have a formula in CoverageBook, and how we work out that formula is we look at the URL of where the coverage was, and from that URL we'll be able to see whether it was on the home page, on a category page, or deeper into the site. We also look at the size of the site by looking at the domain authority, and that gives us an idea of how many pages in total that site has, and then how to bring that sort of percentage and divide down into how many people might have landed on that page. It is an estimation, but it's a much more realistic one. So I do recommend doing something like that and just being realistic with your numbers. Now, not everybody is using CoverageBook on this webinar, but there is something similar that you can do. I recently wrote a blog post, and this is the blog post. It's on the CoverageBook blog. So if you go to blog on CoverageBook, you will see a blog post on there saying no more inflated numbers. Make 2018 your year for PR measurement. And there is in there a formula that I share where you can really sort of get realistic about how many people saw your piece of coverage without having to use CoverageBook. So that's free to use and free to share as well. So have a look out for that. So yeah, be realistic with the awareness numbers. Okay, so I just looked at the article level views, but you could, you need to sort of add this to your, by campaign level, which is what we just went through. So you could look at all of your articles and then look at your target media list for this particular campaign. And then set sort of a total number of how many people you want to be able to reach. That will actually really help you with your targets and making sure that your target list is right. But then you'd also want to go sort of a level up as well. Obviously, you need to count how many mentions are in those pieces of coverage as well, and not just how many people saw it, because that goes hand in hand with whether there was awareness of the brand or product or whatever it might be. And then you're going to get a good idea of who actually saw it and how many people actually saw it. So that's why campaign level on awareness. But then sort of that level up on the organisational targets. You might want to then look at whether you could target, sort of survey your target audience to see whether they're more aware of your specific brand, etc. in comparison to last year. That could be one thing. Another thing that you could do by checking whether your awareness has increased is looking at searches on Google around your particular thing that you're trying to increase awareness around. So if it is a brand, for example, you can look at how many searches there have been for that particular brand. So the way that you do that is look at Google Trends, and you could put in your brand name or your product name or your, you might be promoting an event, for example. And then what you can do in Google Trends is set the date that you want to look at, and then Google Trends will bring back whether there's been an increase, or will give you sort of a timeline of searches of that particular term that you've added. And from there, you can look at whether there has been more sort of interest around a particular word. And then that will give you, over the course of the year, you could look at your campaigns and the time that they went live and see whether there was more interest around that particular term, product, brand in comparison to the time of your campaigns. So that's how you would set it over a sort of a yearly course as well as a campaign course. Hope that makes sense. Right, going on to the next example. Content engagement is very broad. So what metrics would you look for with this? So before we sort of get into the detail, just thinking about the term content, it's really important to be specific about what kinds of content. So is it content that you're including in your coverage itself? Is it content that's on your client's site or your own site that you're trying to promote? And then once you've sort of established between the two, or whether it's both, you also want to be looking at or asking what kind of behaviour is the engagement. So what does engagement really mean? And where are you looking at? So what kind of engagement are you thinking about with these readers of the coverage, or are they sort of downloading that content on the site? So you want to be sort of getting really specific about that. Then once you've got that clear, look at past examples of similar activity where you had similar formats of content to try and get the detail of your numbers. So I'm just going to go through an example. So I wanted to look at this recent example that was about the effects of that Diet Coke can have on somebody, that was in the Mail recently. Now, the reason why I chose this particular example is because there was content in the article itself, and it linked through to a site that also had the same content. It wasn't exactly the same, it was a similar infographic on the site itself. So obviously it was PRing from this particular site. They secured the Daily Mail article and they secured a similar infographic on the Mail as well. So this is great. But what can we do in terms of KPIs for this? So I'm just going to come out and then go on to the example. Do remember to add any questions you have on anything I'm saying into the chat, and I will answer afterwards. Okay, so here is the article that I wanted to, that I just mentioned. So this is all about the Diet Coke and what the effect it can have on you. And you can see here that there's an infographic that's been included on sort of time by time what it can do to you, which is pretty horrible actually for any Diet Coke fans out there. But yeah, you can see here that there is a link going through to the Renegade Pharmacist blog. And then on the blog is a very similar but slightly different infographic. So yeah, going through the times in what the Diet Coke can do, the bad effects it can have. So when you're thinking about content engagement as a KPI, what we should really be looking at is both of these. So the actual piece of coverage as well as the sites that we are promoting. So I'm going to go straight up to the top because we've already mentioned the total traffic that goes to the mail each month. We know that's a really high number. We've already talked about that you want to be specific about how many people actually saw your piece of coverage. So I've gone through that about how to really get down to article level numbers of who saw your coverage. So we've covered that. So definitely include that. But when we're thinking about actually content, we need to ask ourselves, what does great content and content engagement mean? So we're putting ourselves into the shoes of these readers. If you thought that this was a really interesting piece of content, what would you do? First of all, you'd click on this link and it would take us through to that site. So first of all, I want to be able to track that. So track whether there's, first of all, a link in your coverage. Yes, there is. So we should consider that for all of the pieces of coverage around this particular campaign. If we're trying to increase, we're trying to get this infographic out there and this content out there, we need to see whether we actually had a link in the pieces of coverage going through to our sites. Then we want to be able to see whether people clicked through to the website here. Then if people really enjoyed this article and enjoyed this content, what would they do? They would share it. So I'd want to be looking at social shares as well. So there you go. There's 3 metrics there that I would say are really important if you are promoting content in an article and content going through to a site as well. So there was 3 there. There was the, you can have the inclusion of the actual content itself, a link going through to your content, and a traffic from any traffic that's gone from these clicks that have gone from the mail online through to our own site. Okay, so there's sort of 3 sort of live examples that are very important. Just going back to the slides. So yeah, so looking at past examples, so this year for 2018, you might have content engagement. What I would recommend doing is, I've sort of used this one as an example, but I recommend you look back at your past coverage, and when you had sort of past infographics or past content that you were trying to promote in past campaigns, check to see did you have social shares on those pieces of coverage? What were they? If there were 61,000, it's very high. If you had 61,000 on one piece of coverage last year and you've got the mail online in your target list for this year, set that as a target or increase it if you think it's a stronger piece of content. Again, if you had links included in your piece of coverage last year when you were promoting a piece of content, how many click-throughs did you have? How many links did you get for that similar piece of activity? If you're using, again, similar sort of content, look at that, set that as a gauge, and then increase it if you need to for this particular campaign. So going to your primary and your secondary, so organisational impact and campaign level. So your campaign level, number of coverage items that had the content, of course, links in the coverage, and if you can, you could look at the traffic coming from the coverage to your own site. And then also I've got SEO impact here because links going into an owned site really does impact where your client's site might be seen on Google. So if you know that you're going to be running a few campaigns this year, all generating links into your client's website, you should really have SEO as an organisational sort of KPI for this year, because counting those links and then looking at what impact that has is really going to help. And then, of course, social shares is a really, really good one, because if that content has really engaged the reader, the key way of finding out how engaging that was to see how many shares it actually had, because they've made an action. It's not just raising awareness, they've decided to click and share that with their peers. So it's a fantastic KPI to have if content is part of your campaigns for this year. So how do you actually track some of those? So I've given you an idea of the kind of metrics that you could set, but how do you actually track those? Because they're not easy, and I've mentioned traffic a couple of times. So how would you do that? So tracking coverage to an owned site. Now, the only way is really looking at analytics. And you'd need to gain access from, so if you're in an agency, you'd need to gain access from your client to look at that analytics data. If you're in-house, you may well have access to Google Analytics or Omniture or any other analytics package that you may have. You may have that already. If you don't, get in touch with digital team, and they will hopefully be able to grant you access. If you're agency side, it can be quite a challenge to gain access to analytics, but it can be the key to proving some amazing impact from public relations. And it really is the key to proving impact and really associating it back to public relations as well. Whereas sometimes other areas of marketing can claim the success of certain areas. Actually looking at analytics, you can prove that the traffic came from your Daily Mail article or not. So it can be a challenge, as I've mentioned, to gain access. Again, go to the CoverageBook blog. Gary, the founder of CoverageBook, you may know his face from Twitter. He wrote a brilliant blog post on how to gain access. I've written also a template of an email that you can send to the digital team on what you do with that access and why you need the access, because really do recommend, if you haven't got access, set that as your number 2 resolution for PR for this year, to gain access to analytics. So that's sort of a big recommendation. That's the only way you'll be able to see what traffic, if any, your coverage sent on to an owned site and content. You can see here on my slide, it says answertheclient.com. That's a free tool that we have developed and set up. Basically what it does, you still need access to analytics to be able to use this. But what it does, it might just reassure your clients, and also will make your life a lot easier. It's a real shortcut to just get to the traffic number. So analytics basically looks at all activity of a website. But really for this particular metric, you just want to look at traffic from your piece of coverage. That's really hard to get to when you actually just go into analytics. It will take a while to get to that information. Whereas answertheclient.com, we basically set that up to shortcut you straight to that piece of information. You dump your links in of all of your pieces of coverage, you connect to the analytics, and then we'll just pull back that data on that specific query. So that should speed things up. SEO impact, this is a big one. As I mentioned, you can have a whole webinar on this. I would start with working with the SEO team in-house. The key thing that you'd want to be tracking is links in your pieces of coverage. That is the key driver to positions changing and where your content is in search results. But to really sort of nail your specific metrics, really do recommend working with the in-house SEO team. Campaign specific for content. So the number of items with content included is human count, I'm afraid. But links in coverage, again, human, to actually count that, use the Excel spreadsheets, or if you're using CoverageBook, this is it. This is you might not actually know this if you're a user, but it's actually a feature in CoverageBook, so you can just count for links in each individual report. And then in the insight section, you can see on the table how many links you've achieved for all of your clients, which is a great count to look at that SEO impact here. And then, of course, social shares. You can look at that on a publication basis. You can look at tools like Share This. There's some free tools out there. Or, again, you can use CoverageBook, and that's all automated for you. Right, the next section for setting KPIs for this year, media targets. So your media list might look like this. That's fine. That's what media lists normally look like. You might have the publication, the contacts, the details. That's great. Often a target media list, I don't know how good you guys are, but they didn't used to be updated that often. The contact details would be updated, but we wouldn't sort of keep returning back to see who are the most influential. And that's what I really want you to try and do for this year, because you need to ask yourself, why are your targets your targets? Who are they? Who's in your top tier media targets? And why? Why are they there? If you've got specific journalists that you're going to be targeting this year for your campaigns, find out where their content is positioned on their particular website. So we've already gone through being realistic about how many views your coverage gets. Now review your contacts. Where are they on the site? If their content is normally or up there on the category pages, then you're going to get a higher article view than you are if they're buried in the site. This is really important for the true impact overall. So really sort of be looking at that. And just think about what kind of influence metrics you're looking at. Go beyond just unique users. Look how many social shares some of your contacts get on an article level day by day. What does that mean to your kind of results? So it's really important to be viewing your targets. So as I just mentioned, look at some of the targets that you have. Look at some of the areas that you're targeting on the site, and just really think about what is those coverage views that you could be getting in relation to the whole total traffic that the whole site gets. I'd almost forget these big site-wide numbers. They're good to start off with your media list, but once you know the specific area that you're going to be targeting, really just focus on what kind of views they're going to get. Now, obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to do in CoverageBook because this is all automated. If you are a CoverageBook user, I recommend setting up a sort of a new client folder that's just for media lists, actually. So you can download as a CSV from your reports. So put in all of your target sites now, and then download as a CSV, and then you're going to have all of the specific views of the specific pages that you're going to be targeting. Then you can reorder and prioritize based on that rather than the actual number. So looking at your specific contacts as well, just refresh those and be open to maybe changing them. So I know that a lot often they're based on the actual content that they're writing, but remember there could be some emerging that you might not have realised. So have a look back at your past coverage, look at the journalists that wrote about your brand over the last year, who are standing out as the ones that have written about you the most. Where are they positioned on site, but also how influential are they? You'll find that now there's a lot of journalists, especially on the big news sites, that will tweet and socially share their articles. Often they're the articles that have the most social shares, and also they're the articles that will appear in the Google search results much quicker and much higher than some of the others. So please do look back at who's been writing about you, who you targeted in the past. Are they getting big social shares? Do they have a big domain authority on their blog or on their site? This is another metric that I recommend using in media lists. But yeah, there might be some that could come as a surprise. So if you have started recording all of your coverage already, or if you're a CoverageBook user, use the insights section and say, let's say that my client is Adidas. Huffington Post might be on my top tier media list for 2018 for a particular campaign. Before I confirm that, I'm just going to have a look at the past coverage that we've secured on the Huffington Post. I'm just going to start to explore it. So you can see once you look down that the estimated coverage views changes. So I'd want to know why this top piece had 80, almost 88,000 views in comparison to the other one, which was just under 60,000. So, okay, and that's interesting views, but the lower views actually had more social shares. So I'd be really interested to know why. Who's the journalist on that? Did they, I imagine, I can guess with this, is that the journalist on the second piece actually tweeted that out and would have had more social shares. So definitely look at that and be open to refresh your media target list. With all of this, we are setting KPIs that are going to be making a real impact and a difference to your organisation, to your brand, to your client. But these can also be really great for you personally or for your teams if you manage a team. KPIs set on a personal level for the people who are actually selling in this work and securing this coverage is great. So just as much as I recommend that you record this on a client level and a campaign level, and absolutely set your own KPIs for this year as well. So having a clean data set, so recording all of these results, provides you with so many options with how to go back and query stuff. So for example, if you have an appraisal coming up, or if you're setting any objectives for people, if you are the managers on this webinar now, maybe you could look at how many items of coverage were actually achieved in the past year, or this could be something that's a goal that's set for the year to come. But if you have been recording all this coverage and the metrics within it, what was your standout pieces? Did you get, what was the highest social shares you ever achieved on a piece of coverage? If you're recording all of this, it's brilliant to have these highlights and on a personal level, again, or if you are managing a team, to be able to set targets around this over the course of the year. Also, domain authority, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Domain authority, for those of you who don't know, it is an influence metric for websites. It's a metric that has been set by an external organisational to us. It's moz.com. It kind of represents how a search engine views a website, and it's really about the strength of a website and the influence it has online. And it's out of 100. It's a number out of 100, and it goes up as the site becomes more influential. So it's a really good one to have in media lists and target lists. But again, it could be set as a KPI. So what was the average domain authority over the course of the year? Or what was the highest domain authority of a site you achieved coverage on? So they're all really useful goals that could be set for career development if you are managing a team. Also, if you're not, and if it's actually you doing this work, start to set this now for yourself. They're brilliant to pull out in all of your appraisals and your reviews. But without recording any of this, none of it's possible. So as I mentioned, make this your resolution to start recording all of your coverage and the metrics within it. Again, you can do this with CoverageBook, as I've mentioned. So just to bring this to a close, here's some summary points for you to remember. Without clear objectives, KPIs are absolutely pointless. So really get clear and specific on your objectives, and then get specific and niche with your KPIs. Retrospect regularly, so record the results and then look back at them. So look back every quarter, every 6 months, definitely annually. Be realistic with your numbers. Don't think bigger is better. Don't go for those big site-wide numbers. Really think about article level data for this year. That's going to be really make a difference. Look at past content to gauge targets. So look back at your past results. Did it have content? Did it not? What was the result of that content from the coverage that you achieved? Use that as your benchmark and increase from there. Refresh your media targets. Where are they on their sites? What are they doing in terms of sharing their articles? What's their influence? Make that a difference to your target and your priority list. And number 6, use KPIs for your own personal achievements as well. Okay, thank you. That brings me to the end of this webinar. And if you don't have time to set any questions right now in the chat, feel free to tweet us at CoverageBook. I'm also at Stella Bayles, or just send an email to support@coveragebook.com. I'm going to stop sharing now and just see if there were any questions. Okay. Okay, so there are some comments. Thank you. Let's have a look. Thank you for the tip about Google Analytics. No worries. You are very interested in a webinar on SEO and PR. Great. Many of you are. Perfect. That is my experience. For those of you who don't know, I spent 7 years in sort of traditional PR, if you like, and then another 6 years in SEO, and I merged the two together. I've written a book on it. So you can have a look at the book, but I will do a free webinar as well. Okay, so what was that domain authority URL from Rob? So yeah, domain authority has been devised and created by Moz. So moz.com. Moz do all sorts of different things. So when you land on the site, you'll be presented with all the different tools that they offer, but you will find that domain authority is there. So if you're not a CoverageBook user, actually, you can still use domain authority as a metric. And in fact, Moz had a really great free download, and it's a Chrome extension. So have a look for the domain authority Chrome extension, and you can switch it on or off. And what it does is that whenever you go onto a website, let's see if I have it now, I could probably show you. Whenever you go onto a website, it will just show you the results of that particular website. Yeah, I don't have it right now, but I can explain. It will show you the results. So we'll look at the domain authority of that particular website. And then also if you search in Google for, let's say, lifestyle websites or foodie blogs, there you go, and then in your search results you'll have a whole list of foodie blogs. You switch on the Chrome extension of Moz, and it will give you the domain authority of all of those sites. Perfect for looking at targets right now. If you are not the people doing sell-ins and you are managing them, recommends that they all download that right now. Okay. So I've asked some questions in the questions section. Oh, thank you. I didn't have that. Hang on. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, we are up to an hour now. So I will go, if anyone can stay on, I will answer these questions. If you need to leave, then you can look at the recording and just fast forward to the end. Okay, so do you recommend any tools that would allow us to see SEO impact of a link beyond site referral traffic? For example, impact on visibility in search engine results pages. Yes, I do. Okay, so there's quite a lot of tools out there. And also, first of all, I'd just check with your client to see what they use. Because numbers can really vary between different tools, and what you wouldn't want to do is use a particular tool that has a completely different number to what they're using. Really, you'd be looking at analytics and looking at the traffic from search results would be a main one that they'll be doing. So you could ask for analytics access, but there are some other tools out there. So Search Metrics is a tool. It's not a free tool. In fact, I don't know of any free tools that you can use in SEO really, other than sort of link counters. But actually looking at positions of a brand or of a piece of content. I used to use search metrics. That was really useful. The cost depends on how you use the tool. There's sort of different levels of how much you can see. But how I used to use that, which was really useful, is that you would put a website in to say Adidas is my client. I put the Adidas.com into search metrics. I look at the nice clear graph of increase of traffic from natural search. So obviously PR affects natural search, which is the main bulk of the results in search results, not the ads. So you can separate that traffic out and you can just look at the traffic from natural search to Adidas.com. And then it's a nice little graph. And then what you can do is layer over the top of that your coverage results. So coverage that you know that you had links in, and then look to see whether they correlate. So that's something you can do with search metrics. But then that is quite, that's a paid for tool. I would say if you're not doing anything right now, you say you are doing links, just start counting the links, start to look at how many links you are passing onto that site, and look at the domain authority of the sites that you've got links on, and then present that at least to the SEO team. And then you could even start to track positions yourself if it's just for a particular main keyword. Because some of the tools are expensive. Check to see what your client's using. Does CoverageBook, this is the next question. Does CoverageBook track social shares on Twitter? Good question, Lauren. No is the answer, and that's unfortunate, is because some changes that Twitter made to their API around sort of 18 months, 2 years ago. However, we are looking at changing that very soon. We've found a way around it. So we should be having Twitter shares at some point very soon. Email us in to find out more about that. When working on a new client, do you have any tips with benchmarking without having clear data from past agencies or in-house teams? From Lauren. That's a really good question. I would look at where you're trying to get to. And again, that comes down to having really clear objectives right at the start. So if you are trying to increase traffic, for example, to a website, I would then look at the kinds of views that we could get from some of our coverage, then be realistic to how many people might actually click on some of those links, and then sort of make a good guess of what that click-through rate might be onto the site. I mean, that's the way I would try and do it, to try and be as specific as possible in terms of benchmarking, because what you don't want is to just come up with, pluck a number out of thin air and then it'd be really difficult to try and achieve. Without having sort of past data, I would just be super clear about the objectives and work down from there. And if a campaign calls for a change in behavior, do you have any tips on how to measure campaign outcomes that don't rely on surveys for lower budget clients? Oh, that's really specific. I tell you what, the person that asked me that question, it might be good if you email me a bit more detail, and we'll try and tackle that one a bit more together, because I'm not sure if I totally understand it, because it's quite a detailed one. But yeah, send me an email, support@coveragebook.com, or DM me. Oh, Cindy's interested in this as well. Okay, let me try and go for it. Okay, so if a campaign calls for a change in behavior, do you have any tips on how to measure campaign outcomes that don't rely on surveys? So a change in behavior from the target audience, I'm guessing. Say yes, if that's right. And yes, okay, great. And do you have any tips on how to measure the campaign outcomes that don't rely on surveys? Yes. Might be broad, but it's an idea. I mentioned during the slides, I mentioned using Google Trends. Now, this is for lower budget clients. If you're saying lower budget clients, maybe they're small brands, in which case Google Trends might not work, but you can try it. Google Trends looks at searches around a particular topic or whatever keyword you put in. Actually, I've got two suggestions, and it is around search. So if it's around a okay, so it's around a brand or a topic. Put that topic right at the beginning of the campaign, so before your campaign, into Google Trends, and look to see if there's any searches around it, and then do that on a regular basis to see if the searches go up. Also, I would use another tool, answerthepublic.com. So that's another free tool from us. What that does, you could put the same term into that, and what it does is it looks at all of the questions that were asked around that particular topic and into Google. And so you'll see, again, do that before your campaign, do it after, to see if the types of questions around that topic have changed. Answerthepublic.com. Again, it's based on, we use the Google API, and that's why it's free to use, but we're just presenting a really nice way. It'll look great in your presentations as well, but it will just show all of the different questions around that particular brand, topic, whatever is the key term that you put in, and yeah, it'll show you a difference. Google Trends, just search for Google Trends, that will actually just show the sort of the number of searches going up or going down. So that'll give you an idea sort of numbers. But I think, and there's to look at the change of behaviour or a change of opinion. If you can't do a survey, look at how people are acting online. You can also go into a bit more of a qualitative perspective on that, and actually search yourself and to see how people commenting about that particular topic or brand, etc., on social platforms. Pull out examples that would then match to the searches on Google as well, and you can sort of add that analysis in to reviews. Again, don't just do it at the beginning and at the end. Look at it midway as well, and pull out those insights to see if you need to change direction in your campaigns as well. I hope that helps. It definitely works on big brands or big topics, because I know that I've used that before. It'd be interesting to know whether it does work on sort of smaller ones too. I hope that helps. That does bring me to a close of all of the questions. As I mentioned, if you have any more that you forgot and you want to add, email support@coveragebook.com and just say it's for me, Stella. Tweet me. Thanks for your feedback, guys. Tweet me at Stella Bayles on Twitter, or at CoverageBooks as well. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this whole series of new webinars. The next one will be on SEO PR, so look out for the dates on that. Thank you all for joining me, and yeah, speak to you soon. Cheers.